Hey everyone. Today's topic, strive to be objective. This is something that is rather difficult to do in practice because it does seem like it's a kind of instinctual thing for us human beings to make snap judgments and assumptions about people or situations. It's kind of like a survival technique pretty much, right? Like we're used to looking out there in nature and having to spot threats incredibly quickly, so we have that in our instincts. And it is something that isn't quite as useful now that we're living in cities, but of course we still have that quality because we're not too far removed from those days when we were living in nature. So it's just something we have to learn to adapt to because it isn't super helpful to make snap judgments and assumptions and then believe that they're accurate. Because very often we will be wrong. Like we're not omniscient beings, we don't have all the information, but so often nowadays you get people believing their snap judgments and assumptions, believing they're infallible and that they're able to figure situations out or people out with very little information, and it's unfortunate. So I'm making this video to make sure that you guys strive to be objective as much as possible because it will make your relationships better and your interactions with other people. Because nobody really likes being judged, especially by someone who believes they're correct when they're not. Like, I've had situations like that where when dating, women would believe that they had me all figured out within like less than 3 dates. And I would just be like, are you kidding? You seriously? You think you have me, an entire human being, figured out in 3 freaking days? I'm sometimes convinced that even if you took an entire lifetime, you wouldn't be able to fully know everything about another human being, because at the end of the day, the only way you could fully understand someone is being able to jump into their mind and see the way they think. But you can't do that. So you can get to know someone really well over a lifetime, of course, but there's still going to be parts of them that you don't know, or maybe there'll be some things that they don't share with you for whatever reason, maybe even because they don't even think it's worthwhile telling you. So there will always be little aspects of them that you don't know about. So it's just so funny to me how some people believe they can figure others out in a really short period of time because you likely can't. So often, or as much as possible, aim to go the objective route. Aim to withhold your judgment until you get more information and you're able to make a more accurate assessment of the person or the situation. Just strive to go against this BS of people believing they're like infallible when they're not. There's just too much judgment in the world, and it's unfortunate because most people are going to be wrong most of the time because they just haven't put in the work necessary to create accurate assumptions. And even the people who have put in that work, they're still going to be wrong very often as well. There's a high degree of error in that kind of work because you don't have all the information. Assumptions can only be so accurate when you don't have all the pieces to work with. So it's kind of unfortunate. I've noticed a bit of a trend where it seems like people more often than not go the negative route with their assumptions about people or situations. I've noticed this in like more recent times. It makes some sense because as a whole, usually like the temperament of people will be reflected by like the way the status of the world basically. And in recent times, the whole world has dealt with a pandemic, like the entire world. So it kind of makes sense. People are going to be thinking more negatively now, right? It's just everybody's coming out of less than 2 years of dealing with a pandemic. Like it hasn't been long enough for people to start getting positive again. I don't even know if maybe even a decade from now people will finally be positive again, because the effects that the pandemic had on everybody's mental health, man, they're probably profound. So it's just one of those things. It makes sense, but it's really unfortunate. People will be so often, excuse me, they'll so often go that negative route with their assumptions. They'll assume the worst, or they'll assume that something happened to someone for bad reasons, when sometimes bad things happen to good people and it has nothing to do with that good person being bad. But so many people now will go that route of just being a negative Nancy, and it's really unfortunate. In fact, what actually inspired me to make a video on this topic was a gentleman left a comment on one of my videos I made a while back on online dating. I think it was called Online Dating Sucks, or I don't know. I've talked about online dating enough that I forget the titles of my videos. But in that video, I was talking about how some women online, this doesn't happen often, but it has happened, they don't get my humor, my jokes. And in one case, it actually made the woman get offended. And I thought she was joking at first, because I was joking myself. So I thought her outrage was her just messing around with me back. But she was serious. I even asked, I was like, are you being serious? And that made her even more mad. So it was mind-boggling to me, right? Because I'm like, I was joking. I thought I made it obvious. I even had like emojis with like the winking face with the tongue out. Like, that usually means someone is joking, right? Like I made it obvious, or as obvious as I could. But basically the gentleman who left the comment said something along the lines of, well, maybe you're just not funny, dude, and that's why she had that reaction. And I will admit at first that comment did kind of trigger me, because I mean, I would hope I'm a funny guy. Maybe I'm not, or at least not to him. But it was just, I ended up thinking more about it, and I started becoming curious. One of the thoughts I had was, why did he assume that out of everything possible in that situation? Like, why did he go for that pretty negative assumption of me not being a funny person? Like, there are so many other things that could be at play in that situation, right? Like, maybe those girls had no senses of humor, or maybe the tonality of my joke didn't work because it was over text, and quite often over text, people's jokes and what they're trying to convey will get lost because there's no tonality, there's no energy behind what you're saying. And then another option was maybe we just didn't have the same sense of humor, so our senses of humor didn't match. All of those could have been options. Of course, then there is an option that maybe I'm just not funny. That would be very hard to sleep with if that was true. But basically, there were a lot of different things that could have been going on in that situation. But that gentleman chose to choose, good wording, Josh. He went like a pretty negative route, and it just made me think, like, this happens pretty often. In fact, a lot of people do this, and it happens a lot in my comment sections as well. Like, he's not an outlier at all, really. Well, it's not common per se, but it does happen where people will just assume the worst out of what I say, and sometimes even about myself. And I read those comments and I'm like, what the hell? Like, this person clearly, this is the only video of mine they've seen, because Jesus Christ, they're not giving me the benefit of the doubt at all. Like, I've gotten way worse comments than this gentleman. What he said really doesn't matter in the long run, but like, other people have just, oh man, like, there's some people where, I can't remember specifics, but basically they assumed that I was like for really bad things based on taking a sentence I said way out of context. And yeah, it's just something, if you make content on the internet, you'll have to deal with that. But for everyone else, we still put up with some form of that, because even when you're just out there interacting with other people, occasionally people will misinterpret what you say, and they'll maybe go that negative route and thinking you're a bad person, or that the situation was your fault when it wasn't. And yeah, so just strive to remain objective. Do not be one of these people who are negative Nancy's, as I like to say, because you really shouldn't be immediately assuming the most negative thing, just like you shouldn't assume the most positive thing either. You should be balanced, somewhere in between. In fact, I would say, why not just go like the what is it, where oh God, I can't think of it, when someone doesn't believe, or when someone chooses to not make a judgment on whether a God exists or not. What is that called? Atheist, agnostic, there we go. Oh my God, after spending nearly a minute trying to think of it. Agnostic, remain agnostic. You don't know until you get more information. Just try not to make those snap judgments or assumptions, because you're very rarely going to be correct. And even when you are correct, don't let it get to your head and make you believe you're really good at those assumptions, because it only takes a few more tries before you realize, hey, you're going to be wrong pretty often. So yeah, that's pretty much the gist of what I wanted to cover in this video. It's much better to go through life trying to remain objective, trying to analyze all the possible things that could be affecting a situation, instead of just assuming the worst, or that someone's a bad person when maybe they're just having a bad day. Maybe they didn't get enough sleep the night before. Maybe they lost a loved one recently and they're dealing with that. You never know what someone is going through that could change their behavior, because sometimes good people have bad days. And if you meet someone who is a good person but they're having a bad day, they may come off like maybe not an a-hole per se, but close to that probably, or just someone you wouldn't want to spend more time on, but maybe they're actually a really good person and you just happen to meet them on one of the very few days out of the year where they're not having a good day. So just strive to remain objective, because you don't have all the information to work with anyway. So the odds are you're fallible and your assumptions or snap judgments may not be as accurate as you believe. So yeah, that's pretty much all I wanted to cover in this video. I hope that you enjoyed this one. If you like content like this, be sure to subscribe for more. Otherwise, throw a like and a comment on the video for the algorithm. Definitely let me know your thoughts on this, and I will see you guys in the next video. Arrivederci!